the long johns. Lick looked up at the ugly night sky. Gonna be nasty tomorrow, he thought to himself, but so what? I ain't going nowhere. He checked the two saddle horses standing hip-shot and dozing up against the windbreak. They had 3 more horses and a 50-acre trap down by the creek. Brownie and Bill, the old man's dogs, came sniffing out of their hole beneath the trailer. Lick chopped a little ice in the horse tank with a short post and stood there with his back to the wind looking east. I've been worse, he thought. I've been worse. Well, the next day came in like a dump truck full of wet motel laundry. Lick and the old man were hunched against the wind, riding to check the cows in Slippery Canyon. The cows had scattered bad, and it was miserable work. Lick was wearing a cap with ear flaps. He had on long johns, a down coat, chaps, 5 buckle overshoes, and ski gloves, and was freezing to death. The old man was wearing his usual working cowboy hat, never covered his ears. As it got colder, he would add more shirts or vests under his jean jacket. On really chilly mornings, he would stuff wadded-up newspapers in the sleeves and around his middle. Insulation, he'd say. Well, they tipped over the edge of the canyon rim with the old man in the lead. As soon as they started descending, the wind gave up tormenting them. Stopping to rest their horses, they scanned the canyon that fell clear to the Bruno River, 400 feet below, and 3/4 of a mile away to the east. Not much moving, said the old man. Well, the Navy could have been landing Phantom jets on the USS Enterprise 100 yards away, and the old man wouldn't have heard them. But he still had keen eyesight, particularly at a distance. Lick watched for some movement or 4-legged shadow that would indicate the whereabouts of the cows. Al, there's something down there, the bottom of that bluff just above the river. It don't look like a cow. It looks like a person. You mean a hiker? Said the old man. Wouldn't surprise me, doing a nature hike, looking for birds or cow pies. Well, let's ease on down and check it out, said Lick. The old man kicked his horse down the cow trail, and Lick followed. They lost sight of the figure several times as they crossed the rims and washes along the canyon side. But every time they topped a crest, Lick could still see the person. After 20 minutes, they rode up on the wandering pilgrim. It was a woman. She was wearing designer jeans, black rubber-soled boots, and a bulky, long-sleeved blue sweater. Her short, streaked blonde hair stuck out crazily like muddy wheat stubble with deer tracks in it. The boys had made a lot of rock-clattering noise as they approached, but she paid no attention. "Morning, ma'am," said the old man. The woman turned her head slowly in their direction. She stared but didn't seem to comprehend. Lick dismounted and slowly walked towards her. There was dried blood on the side of her face, and her hair was matted above it. He reached out to her like she was a spooky horse. The instant he felt the rough wool of the sweater, she screamed and connected with a wild roundhouse right that caught him square on the temple. Lick's eyelids fluttered, and light filtered onto the technicolor screen of his retinas. A cold gray sky unfolded into his view. His body began checking in with his brain. Let's see. Flat on my back. A rock beside my left ear. Hands underneath my hip pockets. Cap's chin strap uncomfortably under my nose. Spurs splaying my feet. Blood pounding in my head. Bucked off again, was his first thought. He raised himself on one elbow with difficulty and looked around. A paper sack, which he recognized as lunch, lay nearby. The girl was gone. His horse was gone. His down coat was gone. A pretty selective mugging. They took what they needed. They laid me out like a corpse and left me for dead. Who would do that? Of course, the old man. It was past the lunch hour when Lick saw their camp snuggled amongst the rocks and sagebrush like a machine-gun bunker. The old man's 2 dogs came barking out like the hounds of the Baskervilles till he spoke to them, none too gently. He could see the old man peeking out the trailer window, alerted by the dogs. When Lick returned his gaze, the old man ducked out of sight. Lick strode resolutely to the door, pushed it open, slipped on a chunk of railroad tie that served as the step, and cracked his shin against the aluminum door jamb. He fell halfway in, cursing and writhing. "This had better be good, you old bore, or you're never going to see Social Security. Leaving me in the bottom of that canyon, stealing my horse, stealing my coat. What if I'd froze to death, or a cat come up, or a boulder fell down, or a landslide, or an avalanche, maybe even an earthquake? Did you lose your mind, or what?" The old man looked at Lick and said, "Well, I left you lunch." Lick gave him a long, cold stare and reached down to touch his aching shin. "She's in my bed," said the old man. "She's in pretty tough shape, I figure. She went plumb to sleep and hadn't moved or made a sound." Lick tiptoed down the narrow hall and peered in the door. The covers were up to the woman's chin, only her face visible on the pillow. She still had the dried blood on her face and in her hair. Her sweater and jeans were neatly draped over the chair beside the bed. Boots and socks stood below. Lick walked back to the kitchen. "Coffee?" offered the old man. He'd already poured a cup, and Lick could smell the whiskey fumes coming off it, a special gesture, since they rarely drank liquor in camp, although they did keep a bottle of Jim Beam on hand for guests. Lick sat down at the table and took a sip. "How bad do you reckon she's hurt?" "Well, I didn't try to do no doctoring, but she's beat up pretty bad." "Yeah," said Lick with a sideways glance. "I guess you got a pretty good look." "Kid, there's not much in this old world I ain't seen. I drove an ambulance in the war for a time. Hurt bodies all look the same." "So what do we do now?" asked Lick, chasing somewhat. "Wait. Maybe she'll have something to say about it." Al shambled over to the sprung couch and lay down. The next morning they drew straws to determine who stayed in camp. Lick won. Every 30 minutes he checked on the woman still sleeping in the old man's bed. She rolled or shifted a couple times, but never mussed the covers. Lick was on his fourth cup of coffee and fixing to heat up some SpaghettiOs when he heard a loud thump. He trotted to the bedroom. She lay, crumpled, face down on the floor beside the bed, the cover pulled part way off the bed over her head and still clenched in her right fist. She had on a black sleeveless tank top and white bikini underpants. On her left shoulder blade was a dark brown four-cornered spot about the size of a playing card. Lick leaned forward for a closer look. It was a familiar shape, but just what it was he couldn't quite recall. She stirred, and Lick stepped back. "Are you awake, ma'am?" he asked, and knelt at her feet. "We found you down in the canyon and brought you here, me and Al." He stopped, thinking he was babbling. Slowly she began to pull the cover off her head. The left side of her face was swollen and scraped. She shifted position until she could see Lick with both eyes. There might have been fear in them, interest maybe, but not curiosity. Without dropping her gaze, she struggled to sit up. "Who are you?" she croaked. "Lick." "What kind of name is Lick?" "Don't know exactly. It's just what they call me." She gave him a suspicious look. "Can I get you something? Are you hungry? I mean, something to drink? Well, strikes me you might be needing a shower. I mean, I don't mean you need a shower. It's just that your hair and all." He shut himself up. She tuned him out, trying to make sense of her condition. "I could run a shower," he was saying. "I mean, we turn the water heater down every morning to save propane, so I could turn it up and you could take a shower in half an hour if I turned it on now. I would have turned it on already, except I didn't know when you were going to wake up, so, He studied her. "I'll just go do it now," he said, and turned back into the hall. He returned a few minutes later. "Done. It'll be hot in about 30 minutes. Would you like some coffee?" "No," she rasped. "A glass of water." "Great." He disappeared and was back momentarily with an old plastic glass nearly full. As he reached out to take it, the cover slipped off her shoulder. "Whoa," he said, looking at her arm. "That's a pretty mean bruise. Listen, I'll holler when the water's hot, and then you can clean up, and we'll get you something to eat." he left. In a short while, she heard